Imagine this number, 80,400. That's not how many people live in your city. That's how many beating hearts were ripped out of human chests by your ancestors and were sacrificed for the sun. 80,400 human beings, killed, in 4 days, by a single civilization. And that wasn't even the weirdest part of what they did. Your ancestors invented rituals that would make modern horror movies look like children's cartoons. They believed the universe was literally starving and only human hearts could feed it. They refused to let their dead stay dead. Instead, they kept them in their homes and carried them around like living family members. They transformed their own bodies into sacred weapons by mutilating themselves in the street. They made drinking cups out of human skulls and used them to drink wine with friends. And the darkest of all, they held a massive sacrificial ritual and butchered a complete village in a mass slaughter feast. And they had reasons, cosmological reasons, philosophical reasons. This is the story of 6 practices that prove your ancestors understood something about death, about the body, about the sacred that we've completely forgotten. Imagine believing in something dark so completely that you'd organize the systematic killing of tens of thousands of people in 4 days just to make it real. In ancient Mesoamerica, this wasn't imagination, this was daily life. The Aztecs and the Maya before them believed that at the beginning of time the gods created humans and then they sacrificed themselves. They destroyed their own bodies, poured their divine blood into nothingness, and from that cosmic suicide, the sun rose. The world woke up, you existed. So what did humans owe in return? Everything. The Aztecs called this the cosmic ledger, and it worked like a bank account. Every single day, the sun was losing energy, losing power, losing its will to move across the sky. And every single day, it needed fresh blood to continue, actual human blood, actual human hearts. Without this payment, the sun would stop. Darkness would swallow the world. The gods would die permanently. So sacrifice wasn't cruelty. To the Aztecs, it was bookkeeping. It was a civilization saying, we understand our debt. We're paying what we owe. And they paid it big. During the reconsecration of the Great Pyramid of Tenochtitlan in 1487, something happened that historians still debate because the numbers seem impossible. Thousands of people were sacrificed and their hearts cut out while they were alive. But whether it was 80,400 victims or the conservative estimate of 10,000, the scale remains incomprehensible. Roughly 15 people every single minute, for 4 days straight, across 4 different sacrificial altars. This wasn't disorganized chaos. This was precision engineering. Modern bioarchaeologists have studied skeletal remains and reconstructed exactly how ancient Mesoamerican priests performed these rituals. The victim would be stretched backward over a stone slab, spine arched, chest completely exposed. Then one of 3 surgical methods would be executed. Method 1. Rip the ribs open and reach in with both hands. Grab the heart, pull it out while it's still beating. Method 2. Slice between the ribs. Slide the heart out from the side. Faster, cleaner. Method 3. Saw the entire sternum open like a cabinet door. This wasn't brutality. This was precision engineering. The heart came out while still pumping, while still alive. The priest would anoint the temple statues with it, throw the pulsating organ toward the sun, burn it to ashes. Then the body was either kicked down the pyramid steps, where warriors who'd captured the victim got to take the limbs home for a ritual feast, or delivered to the emperor's royal zoo to feed exotic animals. And the heads? Bleached white, painted with religious symbols, mounted on massive wooden racks called the tzompantli. Eventually, thousands of these skulls would stare down at the living city below. But here's where the ritual gets even more sophisticated. The Maya took it further. They didn't just sacrifice others, they sacrificed themselves. They called it auto-sacrifice, and it was worse than being killed by someone else. In ancient Maya civilization, royal blood was considered cosmically charged, packed with divine energy. And when you spilled it, when you carved into your own flesh, you opened portals to the other world. You could communicate with dead ancestors. You could see visions of gods. Male Maya kings used obsidian blades, or the serrated, venomous spines of stingrays, and they repeatedly stabbed and pierced their own genitals. They were essentially hijacking female reproductive power, menstruation, childbirth. By bleeding from their reproductive organs, they believed they could literally give birth to gods. They could create divine beings through sheer agony. Your ancestors didn't see the body as something to protect or preserve. They saw it as currency, as a negotiation with cosmic forces. We're moving from civilizations that needed to give blood to civilizations obsessed with keeping the dead close, whether by eating them, turning them into cups, or refusing to let them leave the house at all. Let's time travel backward, away from Mesoamerica. We're going to prehistoric Europe, 14,700 years ago, a dark and freezing cave in Somerset, England, during the Magdalenian period. When your ancestors were starving, when the hunt failed, when the deer didn't come, what exactly did they eat? Each other. And they didn't do it in blind desperation. They did it systematically, methodically, like chefs, like butchers who'd been trained in their craft. Gough's cave holds skeletal remains that tell a story written entirely in cut marks and human bite marks. Modern taphonomic analysis reveals everything. The prehistoric humans living there took corpses and defleshed them with surgical precision. They cut away every single piece of meat. They disarticulated the joints exactly like they were breaking down a red deer. They chewed the flesh directly off the bones. You can literally count the individual tooth marks. Then they crushed the vertebrae, cracked open the leg bones to suck out the nutritious bone marrow. Nothing was wasted. But here's what gets under your skin. Here's what proves this was ritual and not just survival desperation. They made drinking cups out of the human skulls. Actual functional drinking vessels. Cups you could drink from. And not just one, multiple. At least 3 brain cases found at the site, including one carefully crafted from a 3-year-old child. These weren't crude attempts. These were crafted objects. Objects made with skill, with intention, with time invested. This wasn't survival cannibalism. This was ritual practice. And this was just the beginning. Because what if the real horror wasn't eating the dead? What if it was refusing to let them stay dead? The Chinchorro people of South America, living along the coast of the Atacama Desert between 7000 and 1500 BCE, invented artificial mummification. They did it thousands of years before Egypt, but they didn't mummify pharaohs. They didn't preserve kings. They mummified everyone, babies, infants, miscarried fetuses. Why? The Camarones Valley where they lived was an ecological nightmare. The water supply contained naturally occurring arsenic at lethal levels. Drinking this poisoned water caused horrific rates of spontaneous abortions, miscarriages, infant mortality. Crushed by grief, by the constant loss of their children, the Chinchorro began to meticulously reconstruct their babies' bodies as a coping mechanism, as a way to transform death into creation. The process was insane. They called it the Black Mummy phase. First, they'd completely dismember the corpse, cut off the head, the arms, the legs. Using stone tools, they'd strip all the skin, muscles, and organs off the bones. They'd scoop out the brain using primitive implements. Then came the resurrection. They'd dry the naked skeleton, then reinforce the spine and limbs by tying sticks to the bones. Pack the body cavity with clay, soil, ashes, and animal hair to give it shape. Then, here's the part that is genuinely haunting. They'd paste the skin back on like a glove, sometimes substituting sea lion skin if the human skin tore or decomposed too much. They'd fit the skull with a long wig of black human hair. They'd model genitalia out of clay. Then they'd paint the entire reconstructed body with a toxic black manganese paste and place a lifelike clay mask over the face. And they didn't bury them. They kept them in the house, carried them around, talked to them, brought them out in full formal dress during annual communal celebrations so the dead could visit with friends. In ancient Mesopotamia, around 3100 BCE, there was a goddess named Inanna. She was feared, she was worshipped, and she had one superpower that would get her immediately banned from every major organized religion that came after. She could change a man into a woman and a woman into a man. Because Inanna transcended the gender binary, her devoted priests and priestesses did the same. They were called the Gali. Assigned male at birth, but the goddess called them to become women. New names, new pronouns, new clothes. They sang in a dialect only women could use. Sacred and respected, they healed the sick. Some married, some had kids. Society loved them. Fast forward thousands of years. Rome conquers everything and imports the same goddess cult. But Rome worshipped aggressive, penetrative masculinity as ultimate power. The idea of gender-fluid, respected priests, disgusting to them. So every March 24th, the Day of Blood, the Galli did something that made Rome lose its mind. They danced themselves into a trance, worked up into ecstasy, and then they publicly cut off their genitals. Ecstatic, sacred, pure transformation. After healing, they lived entirely as women. Bleached hair, makeup, bright robes, walking Rome streets telling fortunes, performing music, spreading joy everywhere. Roman law made this illegal. You lost your citizenship for it, but men threw away their legal status to join them, because being divine mattered more than being Roman. Even the church was scandalized. But these people had figured out something Rome could never understand. Your body is sacred. Transformation is holy. So far, we've seen 4 rituals based on the same idea. The body is not your private possession. The body is a conversation with the sacred. But there are 2 more rituals that brings it all together. The final ritual will shock you to your core and will prove that your ancestors understood something about death and the physical world that modern civilization has completely forgotten. Let us first see the 5th ritual. High altitude, thin air, mountains so tall the sky turns black. This is Tibet, Nepal, Mongolia. This is the land where the earth is frozen permafrost and there's no wood for miles. When someone dies in these regions, they face a problem. You can't bury them. The ground won't accept the body. You can't cremate them. There's no fuel for the flames. So they invented Jahator, the sky burial. The Rogiapa, the body breaker, would carry the corpse to a charnel ground. They'd completely slice away all the flesh from the bones. Then they'd pound the human flesh and bone together into a bloody, soupy pulp. Mix it with tsampa, roasted barley flour, to make it more palatable. Then they'd step back. Massive Himalayan vultures would swoop down, hundreds of them. In minutes, they'd devour every trace of the human remains. The Buddhists called these vultures dakini, sky dancers, sacred creatures carrying the physical body up into the heavens themselves. They believed that after death what remains is just a vessel, meat, biological material. So why hoard it? Why trap it in the ground where it poisons the sacred earth? Why burn it and waste the fuel? Instead, feed it to the living. Let it sustain other creatures. Now let me tell you about the ritual that ties everything together. The one that combines sacrifice, consumption, skull crafting, and slaughter on a massive scale. Imagine your civilization is dying. The crops failed, the animals left, the climate is turning hostile, your children are starving, the gods have abandoned you. So you make a decision. You're going to fix this the only way you know how. With blood, with ritual, with something so massive, so coordinated, so apocalyptic that the gods will have no choice but to listen. This is Herxheim, Germany, 5000 BCE. The linear pottery culture, the LBK, decided to do something that archaeologists literally didn't believe when they first uncovered the evidence. They invited hundreds of foreigners to their village. Then they slaughtered every single one. Excavations uncovered a double ring of massive pits surrounding the village. Inside, violently shattered remains of 500 to over 1,000 people. Unborn fetuses, babies, elderly individuals. Every skeleton showed the same cut marks. Every bone was broken. Every body had been processed. They spit roasted them whole over open fires, completely shattered the long bones for marrow, chewed the hands, chewed the feet, severed the necks, cut out the tongues. Then, because they'd learned the ritual from older cultures, they skinned the skulls and crafted them into drinking cups. But here's what proves this wasn't random violence. Isotope analysis of the victims' teeth showed they came from distant, mountainous regions, hundreds of kilometers away. These weren't neighbors. These were captured foreigners. After the feast ended, they didn't celebrate. They didn't preserve the skull cups as trophies. They smashed them, broke the good pottery into pieces, threw everything into the ditches. It was like they were saying, "We've made our offering, now we let it go." This is desperation transformed into ritual. This is a civilization believing that mass murder was the only prayer their gods would answer. This is your ancestors looking at apocalypse and deciding, if we sacrifice enough, we might survive. They didn't, but they tried. Seeing all this, you must be thinking that our ancestors were savages. However, a more appropriate explanation would be that they were cosmically ambitious. They looked at existence, at death, at the body, at consciousness, at the universe, and they asked questions we've stopped asking, and their answers were written in blood, in transformation, in ritual, in the refusal to accept that death was final. That's what this is. That's what your ancestors understood.